One of my favorite Oscar categories that I look forward to every year is the one for Best Visual Effects. It honors the incredible work of these special effects wizards who helped bring such amazing sights and wonders to the movies they worked on, whether they're fantastical or more subtle and realistic. The category has gone through a couple of names in its history. At the very first Academy Awards, there was an equivalent category titled Best Engineering Effects. This award was won by Paramount special effects engineer Roy Pomeroy for the stunning flying scenes in the World War I movie Wings. Curiously, the other nominees in the category were not recognized for their work in a specific film, although Nugent Slaughter was likely nominated based on his contribution to the groundbreaking musical movie The Jazz Singer. For whatever reason, the Academy stopped giving out this category and did not create an Oscar honoring achievements in special effects until 1939, which is why King Kong never received one for its landmark effects. The adventure movie Spawn of the North was given an honorary award for its special effects the year prior, though, which is what likely sparked the need to create this category. Interesting enough, both effects artists and sound engineers received the Oscar for Best Special Effects, so it specifically honored on-screen effects as well as the accompanying sound effects. The drama The Rains Came was the first recipient of this new category for the rain and earthquake sequences, beating out the flying scenes in Only Angels Have Wings, The Burning of Atlanta and Gone with the Wind, and most surprisingly, The Fantastic Wonders of The Wizard of Oz. Throughout the 40s, the nominees included dramas that made use of special photographic technology, war movies with aviation scenes, and science fiction and fantasy movies that made the seemingly impossible look real. Thus, the winners had a similar variety. The Thief of Baghdad was honored for bringing its Arabian Nights-inspired story to the screen, and it also holds a notable place in film history for its innovative use of chroma key effects. Other winners in the 40s included the World War II movie 30 Seconds Over Tokyo and the ghostly comedy Blithe Spirit. And even though King Kong did not win an Oscar, Mighty Joe Young, made by a lot of the same team, did, and so this could be seen as recognition for both guerrilla movies. During the 50s, George Pal Productions did especially well here, honoring the incredible visions his artists created. Four of the movies he produced or directed won throughout the decade: Destination Moon, When Worlds Collide, The War of the Worlds, and Tom Thumb. And in a few of those years, there were no other nominees. Meanwhile, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, directed by Richard Fleischer and produced by Walt Disney, won for its stunning underwater scenes and that unforgettable giant squid, and The Ten Commandments had the Oscar in the bag when audiences saw Moses part the Red Sea, along with the depictions of the 10 plagues. One of the 11 Oscars awarded to Ben-Hur was for these special effects that included the use of miniatures and matte photography for the battle and action scenes. Going into the 60s, effects artists continued to innovate and accomplish more, which led to some notably groundbreaking winners. George Pal continued to impress Academy voters with his adaptation of The Time Machine winning at the start of the decade. Legendary animator Up Iwerks received an Oscar nomination for his work on Alfred Hitchcock's The Birds, although he surprisingly lost to Cleopatra. Mary Poppins, with its mix of animation, live action, and other impressive imagery, resulted in one of that beloved movie's 5 Oscars. Other winners in the 60s included the James Bond movie Thunderball, the science fiction adventure Fantastic Voyage, which takes place almost entirely inside the human body, and the fantasy musical Dr. Dolittle. Of course, the incredible futuristic spaceships and other awe-inspiring sights led to a victory for 2001: A Space Odyssey in this category, the only Oscar ever won by Stanley Kubrick. There's actually some debate over whether Kubrick should have been the recipient of that award. While he does have a credit for designing and directing the special photographic effects in 2001, people like Douglas Trumbull, Tom Howard, and Con Peterson were just as pivotal to making the stunning visuals seen in the movie, with Trumbull being primarily responsible for the famous Stargate scene. At the time, 3 people could be nominated for the Visual Effects Oscar, but Kubrick should not have been the only one recognized for the effects in 2001. Looking at the visual effects winners in the 70s, you can actually see the dawn of the blockbuster age arriving. Tora 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 was an old-school kind of winner of its depiction of the attack on Pearl Harbor. Interesting enough, it beat out another World War II movie, Patton. The Disney production, Bedknobs and Broomsticks, also won, thanks to the scenes where actors are placed in animated environments, Angela Lansbury takes the sky on a broomstick, and clothes start moving by themselves. There have been years where a movie is the only one to receive a significant number of votes during the nominating phase, and in those times it's given a Special Achievement Award, and this happened quite often in the 70s. The disaster movies, The Poseidon Adventure, Earthquake, and The Hindenburg all won Special Achievement Awards for visual effects. And curiously, 1976 saw 2 movies awarded, Logan's Run and the remake of King Kong. 1977 probably marks one of the most important years in the history of special effects movies, with the release of 2 science fiction movies from young, exciting filmmakers. Star Wars and Close Encounters of the Third Kind were both massive hits that changed the way visual effects were created, and both were nominated for the Oscar, although Star Wars ultimately won. Superman was given a Special Achievement Award the following year for making us believe a man can fly. And as an example of how majorly influential Star Wars was, 1979 saw 5 films nominated for Best Visual Effects, 4 of which were movies involving outer space that were greenlit because of the success of George Lucas's film: Alien, The Black Hole, Moonraker, and Star Trek: The Motion Picture. The fifth nominee, by the way, was Steven Spielberg's World War II comedy 1941. The winner was Alien, which terrified viewers of its vicious xenomorph. Throughout the 80s, Spielberg and Lucas productions would dominate the category. The Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi, which continued to innovate where Star Wars left off, won Special Achievement Awards. Spielberg's back-to-back hits, Raiders of the Lost Ark and E.T. the Extraterrestrial, also won, as did Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. These were all done by Industrial Light and Magic, Lucas's visual effects company, which became the leader in that field. Someone who supervised the effects for a lot of those movies was Dennis Muren, who holds the record for the most wins and nominations in this category. The special effects world also encountered a new way of creating impressive visuals with the rise of computer animation. Computers were used to help create the virtual worlds of Tron, and it was quite groundbreaking in that regard. However, the visual effects branch of the Academy declared that using computers was cheating and disqualified the film from competing. They did eventually change their tune a few years later, nominating young Sherlock Holmes for Best Visual Effects, and even showing a clip of the computer-generated Stained Glass Knight at the ceremony. James Cameron and Robert Zemeckis, directors also known for supporting technical innovation, similarly started seeing their films awarded here. Aliens won for putting together a whole host of deadly creatures, and The Abyss was recognized for the computer-generated water-like beings, while Who Framed Roger Rabbit seamlessly combined animated characters with the live-action settings and vice versa. The 90s began with Total Recall winning a Special Achievement Award for its visual effects. This would actually be the last time there would be no official nominee in this category. Throughout the decade, we see the further emergence of computers as an important tool in making visual effects, with each of the winners developing something new and groundbreaking. Terminator 2 Judgment Day used computers to create the ever-changing metallic form of its villain, while Jurassic Park would especially change the game with its CG dinosaurs, although the film still used plenty of animatronics. Incidentally, the year Jurassic Park won was also the first time a fully animated feature was nominated for Best Visual Effects, when The Nightmare Before Christmas was recognized for its stop-motion wonders. Another fun fact, the live-action Super Mario Bros. Movie was shortlisted for the Visual Effects Oscar, although it was not nominated in the end. So yes, there is an alternate universe where Super Mario Bros. Is an Academy Award-nominated film. Moving on, Forrest Gump won for how it successfully made it look like Tom Hanks was interacting with famous figures of the 20th century who had since passed away, and Babe took home an Oscar for believably giving speech to a pig, sheep, and other farm animals. Of course, big blockbusters like Independence Day, Titanic, and The Matrix won for their accomplishments in wowing audiences. However, maybe the most inspired winner for Best Visual Effects in the 90s was What Dreams May Come. For that film, the artist used effects to give the afterlife the appearance of walking through a painting. In a category that usually honors films with explosions, creatures, and depictions of outer space, that really makes this winner stand out. Entering the 21st century, we see computers become the principal way visual effects artists bring the director's vision to life. Gladiator is a film that uses them to reconstruct the Roman Colosseum and create entire crowds of cheering spectators. They also allow the effects team to integrate tigers into the stadium scenes, thus avoiding the risk of Russell Crowe being potentially mauled by them during filming. One of the biggest landmarks in visual effects is without a doubt the Lord of the Rings trilogy. All three films won the Oscar for visual effects, partly because of how popular the trilogy was with Academy voters, and also due to how the folks at Weta accomplished the task of bringing Middle-earth to the screen. Gollum was a particular standout in The Two Towers, and he would pave the way for further use of motion capture technology in modern movies. The winners in this category during the 2000s especially seem to highlight the process of transforming actors into fantastical creations, including Doc Ock in Spider-Man 2, the titular gorilla in Peter Jackson's King Kong remake, Davy Jones in Pirates of the Caribbean, Dead Man's Chest, and Benjamin Button. These are examples of how the visual effects can help enhance an actor's performance even more, but without losing the occasional humanity or villainy they bring to those roles. The 2000s thus ended on an appropriate note with James Cameron's Avatar. Cameron has said that those previous winning films, starting with The Lord of the Rings, showed him that he could realize his vision of Pandora and the tall, blue cat-like aliens who reside there. The result was a spectacle that blew away both regular moviegoers and the Academy. Due to more and more films using extensive visual effects, the decision was made to expand the category from 3 nominees to 5 the following year, thus allowing more work to be honored. What's interesting is that most of the visual effects winners over the past decade have been prestige pictures, more so than the massive blockbusters that used to dominate the category, although plenty of those are still nominated. For example, Martin Scorsese's Hugo won, which is not a typical winner here, but is an example of how effects can be used to help tell all kinds of stories beyond action movies and science fiction. Another winner was the film adaptation of The Life of Pi, noted for its use of a tiger interacting with a young man in a boat. Unfortunately, Rhythm and Hughes filed for bankruptcy not long after the film's release, which highlighted the unfair treatment of visual effects studios, even in an industry that has frequently needed them to create their most successful films. Adding insult to injury, Life of Pi's VFX supervisor, Bill Westenhofer, had his microphone cut off just as he was going to mention this situation in his acceptance speech. These artists really do deserve a lot more respect for what they successfully accomplish on every film we watch, and moments like what happened in that ceremony show how little appreciation they get for their hard work, not just from the very industry they work in, but even from cinephiles who just think they type in a few keys at the computer and suddenly a tiger or an alien or a superhero appears on screen. Over the past 10 years, we've seen visual effects winners that took us to outer space in Gravity, Interstellar, and First Man, showed us the future in Blade Runner 2049 and Dune, and we even got talking animals in The Jungle Book. The most surprising winner was probably Ex Machina, which turned Alicia Vikander into an android on a much smaller budget than its competitors the same year. 2 additional animated features have also been nominated the past few years: the stop-motion Kubo and the Two Strings and the remake of The Lion King, which sought to depict photorealistic animals, savannas, and jungles. An example of invisible special effects winning the award was Sam Mendes' World War I movie 1917. The effects team were tasked with adding additional explosions and other elements into the scene without breaking the immersive quality Mendes was going for. They even changed the backgrounds to help perfectly recreate the look of that specific war. When people think of visual effects, they usually think of spaceships and monsters, but even something that does not appear to be a special effects movie has a lot of them. People complain about CGI always looking fake, but how many of them notice the CGI in films like 1917, or Parasite, or The Wolf of Wall Street? Not many. Even looking at this year's Best Visual Effects nominees, we have a mixture of more obvious as well as subtle computer-generated effects. You have the showier ones in Avatar: The Way of Water and Black Panther: Wakanda Forever, as well as films that implement them in places you might not expect, like The Batman and All Quiet on the Western Front. Even Top Gun Maverick, which was praised for placing the actors in real jets, used a lot of CGI when they're flying across the screen, with some airplanes being entirely computer-generated. Regardless of what wins this year, all the nominees pulled off remarkable feats, whether using in-camera effects or ones created on the computer. Looking at the films that have won the Best Visual Effects Oscar shows the incredible progression effects have made over the last several decades, as talented artists like Dennis Muren, Stan Winston, Douglas Trumbull, Joe Letteri, Gordon Jennings, Peter Ellenshaw, Ken Ralston, and many more look to take us to other worlds and show us the magic filmmaking can bring. See you next time.